Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door NetAdmin. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about changes. In an industry like IT, change is mostly a fact of life, and I've seen lots of it. Everything from an Atari 1040 ST through the era of the 486 and MS-DOS 6.22, all the Windows variants from Windows 3.11 up to Windows 10. But I'm also a network administrator, and we prize stability. After all, an unstable network means that things break or go missing. And nobody likes it when things go missing. Surprise! So I get quite a bit of guff from some people in my company because I've been labeled as anti-change, conservative, change-averse. But I like to think of myself as open to change if there's a demonstrated need for it. I don't look favorably on change just for the sake of change alone. There needs to be a point to whatever changes you make. I can hear some of you now. Nice, but do you happen to have anything resembling a point to this soliloquy? And I do, actually. Let's talk about Windows. Starting with Windows 10, there have been major feature updates every 6 months. In Microsoft Office, the changes happen even more frequently, every month or so. I hate that. It seems every time I log in, there's some new banner trying to tell me about this new feature or that new button. Honestly, I just want to be left alone with a stable interface so I can do my job. Make a change when there's something broken that needs fixing. Otherwise, I'll go get something new when I want something new. But Windows 11 is even worse. Most people I know have been avoiding Windows 11. I have definitely avoided it, and I categorically refuse to run Windows 11 or anything like it on any of my personal systems. In a work context, we've avoided rolling it out anywhere we can. But the tides of change are inexorable, and we're now at a point in the life cycle of Windows 10 where I could build a system using Windows 10, but I'd have to rebuild it next year anyway before it lost security support. That means I have to start deploying Windows 11 for our customers, no matter how much I hate it. And now we get to the point of today's video, because there are some key differences between running Windows 10 and Windows 11 in a virtual machine, and some additional work you have to do if you want to run Windows 11 smoothly in a failover cluster environment. One of the new requirements for installing Windows 11, there's a few of them, but one of the new ones is a TPM, or a Trusted Platform Module. Like with all hardware in a virtual environment, that's provided by its virtual equivalent, a vTPM. But remember, a TPM is a security-sensitive piece of equipment. It can store cryptographic keys, and it can provide attestation. But how does this work in a virtualized environment, where the host has to be able to provide and run the TPM on behalf of the virtual machine? I'm going to have to skim over the topic a little bit, because there's much more to this than I can explain at this point in time. For now, it's enough to know that the virtual TPM has to be secured to prevent anybody else outside of the virtual machine from accessing or modifying its contents. That's fine if you've just got one host that runs this virtual machine. The catch is, when you're running in a failover cluster and need to move the virtual machine from host to host, how do you keep it secured? Well, Microsoft has a big, full-featured solution to this called Host Guardian Services. I looked into running it, but it's a massive, complex service that's really designed for large companies or data center environments. In these kinds of situations, Host Guardian Services takes charge of the keys used to secure the vTPM, and it unseals those keys to trusted hosts as the virtual machine moves around the data center. Cool, but what about for smaller businesses that only have a few hosts? It's impractical to buy another physical server, or 3 as the recommendations go, exclusively for running this big, full-featured product, just so that you can run Windows 11 in one virtual machine. Fortunately for us, there's another way to do it. The first time you create something which requires this kind of secured treatment on a host, the host will create two certificates, one for encryption and one for signing. In order to seamlessly move a running virtual machine with a TPM between hosts, each host must have a copy of every other host's certificate. You see, when the Windows 11 VM starts, the host which starts it will lock the TPM using its own certificate. So as that VM moves around the cluster, the other hosts all need to have that set of certificates. Again, one for encryption and one for signing. This would rapidly get out of hand if you were managing an entire data center like this, but for a small cluster of 2 or 3 hosts, it's manageable. Want to see what I mean? Come on, I'll show you. Right, so here we are. I've got Hyper-V Manager up here. I've also got MMC, the Microsoft Management Console, up. And you can see I've got the certificates plugin loaded for all 3 of the servers that are here in my failover cluster. If you don't know how to get to this point, you can just open up mmc.exe and then go to File, Add, Remove, Snap In, and then if you double-click Certificates, you want the computer account for this, and then you can choose either your local computer or another computer that you have full access to. But I've already set it up to have all 3 of the machines here. Now, there's a category that will be created here, but it's not here yet because we've never created a virtual machine that requires a virtual TPM in this cluster. So, take a good look at what we've got here, and then you'll see the new category come up once we create the virtual machine. Now, you need to make sure that you create the virtual machine on every server, but you don't actually have to do anything particularly complicated with it. You can do it as easily as just going through, making, a test machine here. I'll make it generation 2 because that's kind of what you're going to need for a virtual TPM. I don't care how much memory I give it. It doesn't need to be connected to anything, and I'm not even going to bother with a hard drive because we literally just need to have it created so that we can go in to the Security tab right here and enable a Trusted Platform module. That's literally all we have to do. Once that's done, we can go back to our certificates here, and when I refresh this, there's a new category here, Shielded VM Local Certificates. And when we take a look at it, you can see we've got 1 encryption certificate and 1 signing certificate. And these are both labeled with the host name of the host that created it. Our goal is to make sure that each one of the computers has a total of 6 certificates, 2 for each host. But like I said, you don't actually get this until you've created a virtual machine on every single host. So that's what we're going to do. I don't know why I keep right-clicking there. It doesn't do anything useful. So again, I'm just going to create another virtual machine here. Make sure it's generation 2. I really don't care about memory. I really don't care about Ethernet, and I really don't care about a hard drive. All I need to do is have something here so that I can do that and have it create the certificate. And then I can just get rid of it right away. Obviously, if you were actually setting up a Windows 11 virtual machine, you would want to keep one of them for your actual virtual machine. But you don't need to keep the ones on the other hosts, again, unless you're setting up multiple Windows 11 machines, I guess. There we are. There's our 3rd test machine. security. Enable that. Get rid of it. And we're done. So, now when I go and take a look at the other two servers, I'll need to do a refresh on these as well. There's the shielded VM certificates on that. And I'll need to refresh this one as well. There we go. So now the tricky part, actually getting the certificates from one machine to another. So, all tasks, export. We do need to export the private key for this. And I will export all extended properties as well on this, just because I don't know fully what properties are required on these certificates. Best to be sure. Well, we will include all the certificates, and we will enable certificate privacy. Am I going to enable certificate privacy? Nah, that'll work. You can do it with a typical password. I'm going to just do it by group, or in this case, username, because, quite frankly, I'm lazy. And I'm just going to label this with the first letter of this host, and this is the encryption certificate. Done. And I'm just putting them on the desktop for the time being, so that it's easy to find. I know where it is. Typical standard lazy administrator thing. Put it on the desktop. It's terrible. And this one will be the signing certificate. There we are. Cool. So now I have to import these into each one of these servers. So actually what I'm going to do here is export all of them before I go ahead and start importing them into places. See, here's a thing. You can't export the private key unless you're actually on that server directly. So putting them all in a single console, while we can see that they're created, it's not really going to be of as much use as we would hope. So in that case, I'm just going to go back in here to remove the snap-ins, because I'm not going to need them anymore. And I'm going to open up Remote Desktop. All right. Wonderful. mmc.exe. Well, these servers are occasionally a little batty about it, so... No, I don't want command prompt. See, this is what happens when you're not paying attention to what you're doing. Add remove snap-in, certificates, computer account, local computer, because that's what I need in this case. All right, we have our shielded VM local certificates. Let's get busy exporting here. Yes, we want to export the private key, all extended properties. And again, I'll just dump it on the desktop. This is the encryption certificate. Yep, there we go. And we do the same thing with the signing certificate. Sometime today would be nice. Thank you. Yeah. There we are. We got both of those now. Cool. Next. There we are. Wonderful. Alright, back to the shielded VM category. There we go. As you can imagine, doing this on every single server, if you have a data center of 10 or 20 or more, is ridiculous. It only really works because this happens to be 3 servers or 2 servers or a smaller number like that. The amount of work that is required would go up pretty much exponentially. Possibly not exponentially. Don't quote me on that. But we're almost done exporting the certificates. Then we'll begin importing them all. And this is the signing certificate. There we go. All right. Now that we've done the export, it's time to start importing. So we need to import from the other 2 machines. So I'm just going to go into the drive of the other machines one at a time. We need to change it to a PFX file. There we go. We are going to mark the key as exportable because it's exportable from the original machine as well. We're not going to do that. It's non-exportable if you do that, and it would make it mutually exclusive. We are going to place the certificate in the shielded VM category. Import was successful, and there it is. Now we have to do this again for the signing certificate. And then we'll do it again with the other 2 from the other host. Love Windows 11 for making this necessary, let me tell you. All right. Next server. And yes, you could make this perhaps a little easier on yourself by saving all the certificates to a central location rather than by just picking the desktop on each local machine. But honestly, in my opinion, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's up to you, whatever you want to deal with. Perhaps the only other good thing about this is you only have to do it once. And, well, once for every host that you have in here. Obviously, if you add another host, you're going to have to do the whole thing all over again. But now you can see we've got all 3 encryption certificates and all 3 signing certificates, and that's what we need to have on each of these. So we're done with this one. That's a good thing. Back to our other one. That's so wonderful. One of our other hosts. And we're going to essentially go through the entire thing all over again. Now, this is my local machine, so this is not what I want. There's also probably a way to do this via command line. And surely, if you were going to be doing this on any more than a few servers, like a handful, you'd probably want to script it. You'd want to script the export, and you'd want to script the import as well. But again, I'm just doing this the, quote, quick and dirty way. I just need to get it done because it's a one-time operation, and that's all I'm really needing to do. Yeah, here we are. One more here. Yeah. The dangerous thing is when you start getting sloppy in what you're doing because you're doing it too much. You always have to keep your focus. We have all 6 certificates here from all 3 hosts. We're done. Now, it's not a good idea to leave certificates hanging around on the desktop. And I would normally clean up after myself immediately after import. But we need to make sure that we have the certificates handy for every single server that needs to have it imported. So I can't really do a cleanup until I'm all done. This is the last server, so as tiresome as it is to go through all of this, the good news is we're almost done. Isn't that a relief? Oh, I've done it again, haven't I? Trying to type in a folder instead of a file name. There we are. One last certificate. One more to go. All right, and when we look at it, we have all 6 certificates from all 3 hosts, and it's fully imported. And now we can go back and make sure that we properly delete all of these certificate files, because it's not a good idea to leave certificates hanging around like that. Those, and lastly, those. There we go. All gone, and everything's imported. Now you'll be able to move Windows 11 virtual machines, or any virtual machine with a virtual TPM, around the cluster without any issues whatsoever. Oh, glad that's done, aren't we? And that's all there is to it. Like I said, you wouldn't want to do a large number of servers like this, but it's manageable enough, sort of, for smaller setups. Hope you enjoyed this little technical dive. I am your next door netadmin. Thanks for joining me.